Hillsboro, Oregon, the largest suburb on the west side of the Portland metro area, but is it the most affordable? Stay tuned to learn more. Hey, what's up everybody? This is Paul Clem with the Home Team Brokers coming to you from Portland, Oregon. And if this is your first time to the channel living in Oregon, make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. We've helped so many people relocate to Oregon and move to the Portland metro area. As real estate professionals, we love to help with that process. So if that's you, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click the link down below in the description of the video and schedule a Zoom call with us. Either way, we would love to help with your move to the Portland area. All right, so Hillsboro, Oregon, one of the largest suburbs in the Portland metro area, all the way on the west side. So on the west side of Hillsboro, you're bumping up against that urban growth boundary, as well as on the north and the south side of Hillsboro as well. So you have a lot of rural area surrounding Hillsboro on one side, and then you have Beaverton surrounding Hillsboro on the other side. So you get a really good mix. You are a little bit further from downtown Portland. This is the Silicon Forest, so this is where the highest concentration of, in particular, tech companies, but also manufacturing of hardware in the tech space as well exist. So a ton of high paying jobs, a ton of highly sought after jobs, and a lot of people moving into the area from all over the country and really all over the world to work in Hillsboro, most notably probably for Intel, but you have a ton of dozens of other really large companies that are either headquartered in Hillsboro or have regional headquarters or just have regional offices. So Hillsboro is a very interesting mix. Again, it's a really large place. You have some older homes, you have some mid-century homes, and you have a lot of newer construction, probably the highest volume of new construction that you see in the Portland metro area right now. So that's something that we'll talk about. You definitely have a very suburban vibe overall, but you can definitely get different environments throughout Hillsboro. Again, older, not so old, a lot of kind of the 90s and 2000s type development and the new construction as well. A lot of strip malls, but you also have areas like downtown Hillsboro, which is really cool. It's this cool little old town. And then you have Aranco Station, which is a little more of a hip area. It has a little more of an urban feel, a lot of townhomes, row homes, things like that. Row houses rather, condos, but also a lot of housing development in there too. There's, I think, over 20 parks in Hillsboro. So there's a lot of green space, a lot of area to get outside and explore. So there is a lot to do in Hillsboro, but in this video, we're going to talk about the cost of living in Hillsboro. I think that because you are a little bit further away from the city center in the Portland metro area, you're all the way on the west side. Generally, the further away you get from the city, the more affordable housing is. There is exceptions to that, of course, and you can definitely get some luxury real estate in Hillsboro, but overall, Hillsboro does tend to skew a little bit lower, and you get a little bit of a better deal when it comes to things like price per square foot. Again, we'll talk about that. And you also have all these high-paying jobs. So I think with that mix, in terms of the economy and the housing prices, you have one of the more affordable areas, also one of the more desirable areas in the Portland metro area. All right, so enough of my preamble here. Let's talk about the cost of living in Hillsboro. Let's start out with the housing. So the median sale price right now in Hillsboro is $540,000. That is notably less than surrounding suburbs, a little bit closer into downtown Portland, still on the west side, but just to the east, like Beaverton, Tigard, for example. Even Sherwood, which is to the south of Hillsboro. So you have a median sale price that is, again, notably lower, but when you drive around Hillsboro, you don't really see, I think, at least for the most part, that this is an area that should be priced lower necessarily. It's all supply and demand, and Hillsboro is a very large area. We'll talk more about that. But $540,000, when we look at the median sale price, of course, that doesn't paint the whole picture. What are you getting for your dollar in your home search, what should you be budgeting based on some different segments, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, etc. So when you start to dig into the numbers a little bit, the median sale price for a 3-bedroom home, granted in the last 6 months, the market has changed a little bit this year, you're looking at $550,000. If you're looking at a 4-bedroom home, the median sale price is $630,000. So that's going to tick quite a bit less for that 4-bedroom home, which I think is where a lot of people are looking at for a single family residence. Families that are looking for, kind of that move up home or a little bit more space, that 4-bedroom home, maybe even with an office or a den, $630,000, that is notably lower again than some surrounding suburbs. And then you get into a 5-bedroom home in Hillsboro, the median sale price is $850,000. That's a little bit more on par with some of the more sought after suburbs in the Portland metro area. If you look at the median sale price for a condo, you're looking at $385,000. That too is a little bit higher than the median sale price for condos in some other areas of Portland or the Portland metro area. And then if you're looking at a townhome, what we would typically think of as a townhome, you're looking at $485,000. And that, again, is just a little bit of a notch higher than the median sale price for attached in some other suburbs of the Portland metro area. So some interesting dynamics going on there. I think you do have a lot of young professionals in Hillsboro because of the jobs that are there, like we talked about. So condos and attached homes are probably going to be at a little bit of a higher quantity than some other suburban areas. And in particular, again, when you look at like Orenco Station, you do have some condos and attached homes in this area, definitely catered to kind of the young professional. Again, it's a little bit of a busier area, has a little bit more of an urban feel. So you're going to get newer condos, newer townhomes. You're going to get condos and townhomes that are a little bit larger, maybe a little bit nicer, and the demand is there too. So that's going to bring the prices up a little bit. But I think overall, especially when you look at the 3-bedroom, pretty on par with a lot of the Portland metro area, but that 4-bedroom median sale price at $630,000, that's where you really start to see some relative affordability for Hillsboro. All right, so let's talk about the commute now. Of course, the further you are away from where you're going to be traveling more. That's going to add to more auto expenses, gas, of course, but also maintenance, depreciation on your car, things like that. So definitely a big piece of the pie when you look at cost of living. And Hillsboro overall is 26 square miles. So that's pretty big. I mean, that's definitely the largest suburb on the west side of the Portland metro area. That might be bigger than Gresham. Gresham might be a little bit bigger all the way on the east side of the Portland metro area. But regardless, if you are living in Hillsboro and you're staying within Hillsboro, either for work or just for entertainment, for play, to go shopping, do your grocery shopping, all the things that people do in their day-to-day life, you could be traveling a lot. You could be covering quite a few miles even within Hillsboro itself. But when you look at where Hillsboro sits on a map, you're again all the way to the west in the Portland metro area, and that downtown Hillsboro in particular extends all the way west. Also Reed's Crossing, which is an area that we'll talk more about. A ton of new construction, the highest volume of new construction that you can find in the Portland metro area. This expansion of the urban growth boundary. On the south side of Hillsboro, tons of new homes, hundreds of new construction, very cool area. Again, we'll talk more about it. But regardless, if you're living in these areas or really anywhere in Hillsboro and you're getting into Beaverton, but especially into Portland, into the east side of Portland, you're going to be covering a lot more ground. So Hillsboro is 33 miles to PDX, to the Portland airport. So if you're traveling a lot for work or otherwise, you can expect a pretty long commute to the airport. You're going to be 20 miles from downtown Portland. You're going to be 27 miles to like Lake Oswego, for example. And so definitely, as much as anywhere in the Portland metro area, you're probably going to be spending a lot more time in the car, a little more windshield time, especially if you do like to get into Portland, if you do like to get into the city and spend a little more time kind of getting out and exploring. Now, as far as a commute goes for work, I mean, if you live in Hillsboro, but you work in downtown Portland, again, that's going to really start to add up. I mean, you're looking at, maybe 45 minutes to an hour both ways, depending on what time of day you're actually commuting. But I think a lot of people are drawn to Hillsboro and they're moving to that area because it is a relatively nice area to live by many measures. And it's a place that brings people in because of the jobs there. So a lot of people relocate into the area, probably got a job in Hillsboro, maybe in Beaverton, but either way, your commute within Hillsboro or even from Hillsboro to Beaverton is going to be much more reasonable than if you're driving all the way into Portland. Another thing about Hillsboro too is being all the way west, you can get out to the coast, you can get out to the ocean a lot quicker. You don't have to fight all that Portland traffic. Getting through town, you're already set all the way west and you're 66 miles from Seaside. It's going to be under an hour and a half for sure, probably like an hour and 15 minutes to Seaside, and then you can get to Cannon Beach and Astoria and some of these other great towns that are on the northern Oregon coast. You also have the Max line, so you have the light rail that goes all the way west into Hillsboro and goes all the way east, or you can even get south into like Tigard, Tualatin, you can get down into Milwaukee, but you can get into the city on the Max line as well. That's going to be a little more affordable when you look at the fare to take the light rail or even TriMet, take the bus. The bus lines all run out there. It's going to be a little bit more affordable doing that than, of course, the gas, but you're looking at more time, of course, too. So I think the cost right now for an annual pass for TriMet, which I think would cover the light rail, the Max line, as well as buses, is $1,100 for the year. And of course, again, that's going to be a little bit more affordable than the gas making those trips on a daily basis. All right, so how about the entertainment costs in Hillsboro? Again, like we've talked about in a lot of suburban areas, when we talk about the cost of living, this is really going to be on a case-by-case basis as far as your lifestyle and what you like to do for entertainment. But in Hillsboro, in the immediate area, you're not looking at a ton of very high-cost activities. A lot of probably what you would get out and do for entertainment is going to be in Portland. So then again, that adds to your costs because of the commute. So if you want to get out to Blazer games, if you want to get out and enjoy some of the great restaurants that Portland has, that's really going to add, as far as the travel time and gas. But if you are staying more in the immediate area, you're probably not shelling out a ton of money for entertainment stuff. I think what a lot of people like about Hillsboro is a lot of the green space and outdoor areas, a lot of the parks, again, 20 plus parks. Plus you can get out to some more rural areas. There's agritourism. You can get out to the coast. A lot of that stuff is very low cost or even free. There's also a ton of great wineries. This is really kind of the most northern region of Oregon's wine country, on this west side into the Tualatin Valley and then down into the Willamette Valley. You can get out and do a lot of wine tasting, join wine clubs, wine memberships. That starts to add up a little bit, depending on how much you're doing. You also have the Hillsboro Hops, which I believe is an affiliate team or a farm team for the Arizona Diamondbacks. So you do have some professional baseball at Ron Tonkin Field, which is right on Highway 26. But tickets to those games aren't very expensive, relatively low cost thing to do. You have Topgolf, which can be a little pricey. And if you haven't been to Topgolf, it's definitely worth checking out. It's kind of like the cross between a bowling alley and a driving range. So that's a ton of fun. But beyond that, really, when you look at Hillsboro, you're looking at a lot of suburban offerings. Again, a lot of strip mall type offerings. You do have some great restaurants in Hillsboro, but not necessarily at a super high volume. And you're not looking at a ton of luxury fine dining necessarily. You're gonna get your movie theaters and your bowling alleys. There is a theater company, so you can go see some plays. There is an orchestra in Hillsboro, so there's things like, there's art galleries. So there are definitely some things to do in the way of like arts and things like that, that you can get out and do in Hillsboro. And like I mentioned too, there's the Orenco Station area, which has shops and some good restaurants and things like that. You also have the Streets of Tannisbourne, which is this outdoor mall, open air mall area. So you do have some great shopping in relatively close proximity at the Streets of Tannisbourne. Tannisbourne is an area, it's actually unincorporated Washington County. It kind of makes up this sliver that borders Beaverton, where it's right in between Beaverton and Hillsboro. But there is some great shopping in that area as well. You do have some of the better golf courses as well in the Portland metro area that are in or near Hillsboro too. So Of course, like anywhere else, there's a lot of things you can get out and spend your money on. There's not going to be a ton of offerings in Hillsboro that are wildly extravagant or are going to cost a ton of money necessarily. So I think your entertainment costs are going to be relatively low, especially for what you can get in an area like Hillsboro. All right, next on the list, we're going to talk about the age of homes. And for context, when you look at the age of homes, you're looking at a couple of things. Generally, the age of a home can kind of dictate what size of lot you're going to get, how big your property is going to get on average when you look at when it was built. So older homes tend to have a little bit larger lots. This is also an area that has been developed a lot over the last 30, 40 years, 50 years. And so there's going to be areas where you can probably still get homes that are on over a quarter acre, maybe a third of an acre. You can get areas that have a little bit more land. Of course, the larger your property is, the more cost there's going to be for maintenance and upkeep. But also when you look at age of homes, you're looking at potential for deferred maintenance. So your systems, your furnace, air conditioning, your roof, your plumbing, even cosmetic things that were maybe neglected a little bit over the years. If a home is 100 years old, there's going to be more potential for this. If you're getting new construction, you're not really going to have to be spending a lot of costs in terms of maintenance, maybe just regular upkeep, to kind of preserve the integrity of your systems, things that you kind of should be doing, that people should be doing. But when you look at Hillsboro, you're going to get a wide spectrum of age of homes because Hillsboro is so large. Again, 26 square miles. You do have, again, some of the highest volume of new construction. So if you're moving to Hillsboro and buying new construction or even buying something built in the last 10 or 15 years, you're going to be getting a smaller lot. You're going to probably be inheriting less issues with the systems of the property in particular. There's going to be less of a necessity to remodel or redo certain things, even paint, for example. But the biggest periods for growth for Hillsboro were in the 60s and 70s, but more so in particular from really the 80s on until now. So the population of Hillsboro went from in the 80s to about 25,000 people to now 110,000 people. So you're looking at, in the last 30, 40 years, you're looking at adding about 100,000 people in terms of population. Well, obviously, a population growth like that is going to necessitate a ton of development in terms of housing. So you do have a little bit of a boom from maybe 5 to 10,000 to up to 25, 30,000 in the 80s. And so you are going to get neighborhoods and areas that have some mid-century homes built in the late 60s into the 70s. Of course, properties like that typically are going to have a little bit of a larger property, fifth of an acre, quarter of an acre. But really, when you look at probably the majority of the development in Hillsboro, again, taking place in the last 40 years, but in the 80s to the 90s, even into the 2000s, you're going to see homes that might need a little bit of work, maybe have a lot of original elements in them, especially when you're looking at kind of the 90s, 2000s, might be ripe for a little bit of a remodel or just some updating, for example. But I think overall, when you look at probably the majority of homes in Hillsboro being built in the last 30 or 40 years, you're probably looking at a little bit less deferred maintenance on average than some suburbs that really were developed a ton in the 40s and 50s and 60s, which a lot of the Portland metro area was, in particular, like when you look at Beaverton neighboring to the east, for example. So when you look at Hillsboro, you're probably seeing a little more affordability on the housing costs overall, but you're probably seeing a little bit less deferred maintenance and probably a large majority of lots that are a little bit smaller, which some people don't love, some people do, some people don't want to have the maintenance and the upkeep, for example, but by default, if you have a lot that is smaller, you're just dealing with less maintenance and landscaping. Okay, next we'll talk about the property taxes for Hillsboro. So in Hillsboro, you are in Washington County. It's actually the county seat of Washington County. The effective tax rate for all of Washington County is about 0.95%, but it's a little bit of a convoluted formula, and property taxes in Oregon cannot increase by more than 3% a year unless there's like local bond measures, for example, that call for more funding for schools, different improvement projects, things like that. But where your house sits is going to dictate exactly which tax districts you live in. So there's different water districts, there's different school districts, there's different improvement districts, parks districts, etc. But overall, you're looking at an effective tax rate of 1.06% in Hillsboro. And so that number isn't exactly what you're getting taxed. Again, it's a couple of dozen, maybe 3 dozen different items that you're getting taxed on based on the different districts that you are actually in. I think one of the bigger things to consider when you look at property taxes in the Portland metro area is Washington County is almost always going to be less than, sometimes about 2/3 of Multnomah County, where Portland is. So you're pretty far away from Multnomah County at this point when you're out in Hillsboro. You can look at certain things depending on where your house sits. If you're in or around the urban growth boundary, where you can get into some zoning for timber, zoning for agriculture. There might be some tax breaks that you can get with that. And really, these are all things that we can evaluate on a property by property basis. So property taxes are public record. So we can look at the property tax history. We can look at the property tax history for the previous year, for the year that we're in. And we can reliably add 3% to that number, and that's typically what your property taxes are going to be. One thing potentially to consider, because you are up against that urban growth boundary, which they expand every 6 years or so, when there's going to be a ton of new development and new construction, like you're seeing in Hillsboro right now, there's going to be an extension of those school districts, more water districts, more development for infrastructure, sidewalks, adding lanes, to roads and things like that for, better accessibility. There might be additional bond measures that you could be potentially looking at. Depending on, again, where your house is, even if you're not in one of those properties that are newly developed with the new construction, you could see maybe a little bit added to your tax bill because of the development that could be going on in that area. But of course, you are a beneficiary of that as well. So a little bit of a trade-off. Okay, next on the list, we'll talk about childcare, another huge expense that a lot of people have. On average for full-time childcare in Hillsboro, right now you're looking at about $750 a month to about $1,400 a month. So a pretty big range there, and that's going to really vary depending on what you're getting. If it's like a Montessori school or if it is full-time childcare provided in somebody's home, for example, you're gonna see really big ranges as far as what you're getting. But right now there's 273 childcare providers in Hillsboro, so that's a ton. So supply demand, a lot of young families, a lot of families out in Hillsboro, also a lot of providers. And if you're on the lower end of that range, $750 a month up to $1,000 a month, that's going to skew a little bit more affordable than some other suburbs of the Portland metro area, or a little bit more affordable than Portland itself. Okay, and last but not least, the median household income, which really is an indicator more on a macro level of what the cost of living could be overall in an area. If the median household income in a suburb or area is $150,000 or $200,000 or something like that, generally the cost of services and things in your immediate area are probably, they're going to rise up to that level, and things are probably going to be a little more expensive because people can't afford it. When you look at Hillsboro, the median household income of $85,000 is really middle of the road, and despite having a lot of high-paying jobs, probably a higher volume of high-paying jobs than any other suburb in the Portland metro area, you're still looking at a population of 110,000. So that's going to be one of the larger cities, one of the larger suburbs of the Portland metro area as well. And the larger the population gets, the more that number can be pulled down a little bit. So I think with Hillsboro, you're looking at really middle of the road as far as median household income and cost of living overall. So Hillsboro is generally considered to be one of the more affordable suburbs in the Portland metro area, not just when you look at prices overall, housing and otherwise, but when you look at what you get for your dollar there, again, in particular when it comes to housing. But it is such a big area with so much to offer. It's generally considered to be a very desirable area and sought after suburb for people to move into. And if Hillsboro is an area that looks interesting to you and you want to learn more about Hillsboro, the cost of living, the housing market, what it's like to live there, make sure to give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click that link down below in the description of the video and schedule a Zoom call with us. On that call, we can talk about your timeline, your budget, what you're looking for, your preferences, your needs, your wants, and really dial in a game plan so you can hit the ground running when the time comes. And if there's anything we missed, if there's anything regarding cost of living that we didn't discuss in this video that you want to learn more about, make sure to leave a comment and we can address that either there or in another video. If this video is helpful, make sure to hit the like button. That helps us out a lot. And if you want to get more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. We really appreciate you watching as always, and until next time, we'll talk to you later.